Welcome to the CA Unified Infrastructure Management Configure HTTPS video. In this video, I'll provide an overview of the various ways you can enable SSL encryption for users in CA UIM. In this scenario, after setting up your CA UIM software, you discovered that users will access UMP and Admin Console through a public network, in this case, the Internet, and sessions will traverse unsecured parts of your network through wireless and mobile networks in meeting rooms and in public access areas. Your network security engineers recommended that you enable SSL encryption. In general, industry standard security requirements mandate the use of SSL encryption for client-server communications on an untrusted network. You can enable SSL encryption in CA UIM through WASP. There are a couple of methods you can use to configure SSL encryption for Admin Console and UMP. You can configure WASP to use a self-signed certificate or an authority-signed SSL certificate. In this video, I'll demonstrate how to configure SSL encryption with a 1024-bit self-signed certificate, but I'll also provide some guidance on how you can configure SSL encryption for higher security environments. Before you enable SSL encryption, always consult your network security engineers and compliance specialists regarding your specific security requirements. In general, industry standard security requirements mandate the use of SSL encryption for client-server communications on untrusted networks. Your network security specialist should tell you what type of security certificate is required. The steps that you use to implement HTTPS vary depending on the type of certificate you are using. The simplest way to enable HTTPS is to use the 1024-bit self-signed certificate. This certificate is generated automatically after you modify the WASC configuration to use HTTPS. I will show you how to create this certificate. Be aware that I am running a very small environment for demonstration purposes, so you will only see this process performed once to configure HTTPS for Admin Console and UMP. Most environments have a robot running UMP and a robot running UIM server. If you are configuring HTTPS for UMP, you must follow this process to modify the WASP probe on the UMP server. If you are configuring HTTPS for Admin Console, you must repeat this process to modify the WASP probe on the UIM server. The first step is to modify the WASP configuration to use HTTPS. To do this, go to Admin Console. Here is the Admin Console view of my robot running WASP. I must modify the WASP configuration in Raw Configure. So I click the probe menu and select Raw Configure. I need to add a key to define the port I will use for HTTPS. This information is defined in the Setup section. So I select Setup and click Create New Key. The key I must add is HTTPS_port. And the value is the port I want to use for HTTPS. In this example, I am using port 8443. Select Create to add this to the list of setup keys. At this point, I must warn you that when you update the WASP configuration from Admin Console, the probe will automatically restart. If the WASP probe is on a robot with UIM server, you will lose your connection to Admin Console. It will take about 5 minutes for this process to complete. I must restart WASP to update its configuration and generate my 1024-bit self-signed certificate. In my example, I can restart WASP by clicking Update. WASP must be restarted either automatically or manually to apply any configuration changes. Okay, WASP has restarted, and I have returned to Admin Console. As you can see here, WASP is now up and running. My self-signed certificate should now be created on this robot. The certificate file is called wasp.keystore. If I log into my robot remotely, you can find a wasp.keystore file in the conf directory under Probes, Service, WASP. Once all instances of WASP are up and running, the easiest way to verify that you are using HTTPS is to go to the login page for UMP and Admin Console. Notice that the URL for UMP now shows HTTPS. The same is true for Admin Console. Now at the beginning of this video, I mentioned that the simplest way to enable HTTPS is to use the 1024-bit self-signed certificate. There are a few more options that you can use that I will discuss briefly. For high security environments, it is recommended that you use at least 2048-bit encryption. You can generate a 2048-bit self-signed certificate to use with Admin Console or UMP. However, Using longer RSA keys significantly affects the speed of encryption and decryption. It is a more complex process to enable SSL with a 2048-bit self-signed certificate. Here I have highlighted the additional steps you must perform, in addition to the steps I showed you previously. You must reinitialize the WASC.keystore and reset its password if you do not know the password for the WASC.keystore, or this is the first time you are configuring UIM or Admin Console to use HTTPS. Generate a public and private key pair with a 2048-bit private key. Import the public and private key pair into the WASC.keystore. Record certificate information. Securely record the new password you set for the WASC.keystore and the validity period you set for the certificate. Back up the certificate files to a secure location. Another option for a high security environment is to use an authority signed certificate. Authority signed certificates allow you to avoid notifications such as, your connection is not private, or the identity of this website has not been verified in your browser. This is the most complex process for enabling SSL. Here I have highlighted the steps you must perform. These steps are in addition to the steps I discussed for enabling a 2048-bit self-signed certificate. You must also generate a certificate signing request for the certificate authority. Create a backup copy of WASC.keystore. This is not a required step, but if you encounter a problem, a backup copy of the WASC.keystore file will save you from having to repeat previous steps. And submit the certificate signing request through the Certificate Authority web form. For more detailed information about configuring HTTPS in Admin Console or UIM for CA Unified Infrastructure Management, refer to the documentation on the CA DocOps platform. Or visit the CA UIM community to join in the discussion. The links can be found in the YouTube description located below this video.